Welcome to the RSM talkBIG podcast, helping you invest well, understand money, and achieve the best tax outcomes. Your hosts today are Andrew Sykes, Chris Oates, and Young Han.
Well, welcome everyone to the RSM talkBIG podcast. My name's Andrew. I'm joined today by Young.
Hi, everyone.
And by Chris.
G'day, Andrew.
Well, today we're going to have a bit of a talk about everyone's favourite topic at the moment, the COVID pandemic, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion around business conditions. Businesses doing it tough out there, particularly with the recent lockdowns in Sydney and Melbourne, and the constant looming fear of snap rolling lockdowns, the introduction of masks, and all those things that are making things difficult. In particular, it's impacting on the hospitality industry. And today we've got with us Joe Trimboli. Joe's from a Canberra restauranting family who runs Italian & Sons, one of the only hatted restaurants in the ACT, and also their long-standing Mezzalera. And if you haven't been there for the burnt butter and sage tortellini with a glass of Chianti, you're missing out on something, one of their signature dishes. So we hear a lot about the COVID pandemic and we hear about businesses being impacted. Some it's good, some it's bad. Chris, where's the impact being felt?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. When we ask businesses about in the different sectors of how they've been going, what we found is it's a difference between big business and small business. It's a different answer. When the question asks how easy would it be to meet financial commitments, that the big businesses were saying that they've not got really any issues and it will be easy or very easy to meet.
So when we hear things are going well, that's really big business. So small business is suffering during this pandemic.
Yeah, so that's your industries, your small businesses like your arts, your food, your retail, accommodation. They're the ones that have really been struggling. They need the foot traffic. They need the people out and about and doing things that they've actually, a lot of those businesses have said that they'll find it difficult to meet commitments.
Businesses in entertainment or relying on the overseas workforce, they're the major businesses that have been hit really hard.
Yeah, and so it goes, you have a look at what business is, commodity suppliers, grocery, retail, a lot of that's big business. But small business is restaurants, it's other forms of hospitality, cafe, small retail. What's the sentiment like with them, Chris?
Yeah, so you're probably looking at least probably a quarter of your businesses, your small businesses are saying that they really, really, really struggle, as opposed to on the other end, over half of your business will meet their commitments. They've got no worries about that.
So small business saying that they really are struggling to meet their financial commitments.
Yep.
And Young, what are you seeing from your clients? What's their number one barrier at the moment?
Number one barrier is finding the people to
Why
run
is
the
that?
business.
I thought there was plenty of people looking for jobs.
Not really. I think there's a job here but didn't really work in the way they wanted. That's one thing. But the other thing is there's about 74% said the lack of job applicants. So people just not applying for job.
Do you think that's a job security? People don't want to move, or things like migration, etc., impacting on
It's
it?
a combination of both. So if you're already comfortable in a job and they, battle through the COVID, they will not want to change. And especially, a lot of the overseas workforce, they're not coming in anymore. So that's
backpackers, uni students, etc.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then even if you get the applicants, they actually don't have the skill or the qualification to do the job.
Can you give us some sort of level on that from what you're seeing?
I think it was about 66% of them. They actually said they didn't have that required skills or qualification. Obviously, a lot of that it was on the international border closure. So that was like about 32%. Another thing will be about type of employment offered. So obviously, after hospitality going through that, people will not, even though you're passionate about it and that's where you want it to be, after going through COVID, there's no job security, so they didn't want to jump into that anymore.
So we're getting lots of businesses. So 3/4 of the businesses are saying that they're not getting in enough applicants, and about 2/3 of those applicants aren't qualified.
Correct.
That makes for a tough business economy and environment. So we're going to do a deep dive into a bit of hospitality now. So, Joe, you were right at the centre of this. As we're starting to see, or as we saw some easing in restrictions, did you see as staffing that you'd had previously, they're now moving over into other industries? Are they more reluctant to come back into hospitality now?
Look, Andrew, there is a little bit of you could say there is a bit of that, definitely. I agree with Young. A lot of people just aren't accessible anymore, and agree fully that there is a shortage of staff in general in the hospitality area. So very difficult. It's almost a case of one restaurant poaching off another. We've gotten down to that point realistically. So yes, that is true, definitely. Whether they want to come back, good question, I guess, because it is a bit insecure, I guess, the whole hospitality scene, if you are a casual worker especially. So I agree also there was the issue with people that were getting the JobKeeper and decided they didn't want to work throughout that period. And it was an issue trying to get them to work, even though you were trying to do the best thing by them in that regard. They thought exactly what you said. Why should I go to work when I get paid to stay at home? So there was a bit of, let's just say it was a bit bumpy on the initial side of things. I guess in the end it ironed out and things did change, I have to say, for the better with the takeaway scenario. Might be getting ahead of here a little bit, but you tell me.
So JobKeeper good, but some unintended consequences in your business.
Correct. Yeah.
Are you seeing a fear of future lockdowns stopping staffing coming back?
Hard to answer that one, to be honest. I don't know if you could say there's a fear because of future lockdowns. I think that's probably a general thing across the board, to be honest. But yeah, look, I think just staffing in general is the main issue in the hospital. Just, in the employment area, staffing is a big issue. Let's just say that in the hospitality area.
Yeah. So take us back to March last year. We're sitting there and out of the blue, you're being told that your business is going to shut down. You've worked on this for 25 years. Yep. How did you feel at that point in time when the announcements came through?
Well, very, very surprised. Initially thought it was just something almost not a joke, but, it was unrealistic, let's just say. So took a few days, weeks to sort of let it sink in. Like here you are, you still, whilst we couldn't open the door, we'd turn up and try and do what we could do. So no sit-in custom. But the way that we were set up allowed us to do the takeaway scenario anyway, and that was because at Mezzalera at that stage we were doing also some takeaway bread rolls and things like that, pizzas, etc. So literal takeaway was still going, coffee, etc. Wasn't realistically enough to keep the doors open, so I had to come up with something else, and that something else was, as per everybody found out later on, was the takeaway scenario.
Did you have to adjust what you were doing and how you were preparing your meals?
Oh, definitely.
A lot of change to move to takeaway?
Yeah. So look, we did two things. And everybody was different. The markets, believe it or not, even though we're within the city boundary, let's say, with both our restaurants, the market was a little different. So we found that over at Mezzalera, there was still some more of the corporate trade around, and they were floating around the lunchtime, but there was nobody there at the dinner time, and vice versa, say, for Italian and Sons in Braddon. So what we quickly worked out was that at Mezzalera, let's say, we came up with a range of things like the pastas and sauces, etc., that were ready cooked. So yeah, we had to come into packaging, labelling, nutritional values, etc., which had to be hurried through, and create a label, a sticker, etc. And then, tamper-proof style takeaway containers, that sort of thing. So all of a sudden you had to haul in all of these extra things you'd never had to deal with before, and come up with things that were suitable for the takeaway market, in that, once they got it home, it was easy to prepare, cook, heat up, or whatever you had to do with it, basically. So, yeah, bit of...
Or even the supply that you started doing to IGA.
Yeah, that came along very shortly after, so...
Yeah, so talk us through that. So you actually started selling, you started your cooking in your restaurant.
Yep.
Then you're doing takeaway and getting it in condition, and then you've taken the further step to sell retail.
So we decided to have a look at the retail area, and came up with a limited range of things, and got them into the local IGA up at Ainslie. And that has been, very successful and still continuing to the day.
And I think that's actually really good because retail was one of the industry that struggled as well because of, border shut down and increased fee of the freight and everything else. So if all the business sits down and actually think about how we can actually cooperate together, I think that's a great solution.
Yeah. Look, it's a really good idea. It is ongoing at the moment, and we've had a lot of call for it. In fact, we're not currently equipped to deal with the excess demand that we've had for it, to be honest. It's really, honestly, almost another business in its own if you really want to take it on to the next level.
Yeah, when you were doing the takeaway and even, I guess, supplying to the Ainsley shop, how did the delivery service, how did you get that into the business?
As into the supermarket, you mean?
Or even out to customers?
Oh, out to customers, yeah. Well, look, that was another thing caught us by surprise. So the delivery service was literally at the evening style of things over at Italian and Sons, and we started out with an app as per usual, and orders were coming in, and come Friday, the first week we did it, we were just literally inundated, and not enough people to get around and do it. So off we went.
Kids out.
Almost, yes. We had the kids with us. I was in a car. My brothers were in a car. Everybody that had a car was in a car, and we were just delivering everywhere you could. Yeah, it was very interesting, very popular.
So you chose to deliver yourself rather than use a delivery service or platform?
Yep. So I think the only reason we did that, I mean, a lot of things happened very quickly back then, but the fact of the matter was some delivery services were actually profiteering to the max at that point and wasn't viable, and it was just quicker and easier, and the product was better if you got it out on your own. It was just faster to do it. And
because like Menulog and all that kind of apps, I think the percentage is about 20 to 30.
Yep. And the issue with those that we think, look, we've never done takeaway, but the worst thing about takeaway is that if it sits in a car for an hour before you get it, it becomes mush. So the whole idea was not just to get it out, it was to get it out as best we could. Yep.
So you found you could keep your costs down and control quality by getting it out.
That's right.
On your own.
So, it wasn't just about getting it out. The quality had to sort of still be there as best can be.
So we had different stages. So that was lockdown, and then everyone was allowed out of lockdown, and business started getting back to usual. Yep. And how are these sort of snap lockdowns or having to wear masks, how do they impact your business?
Look, coming out of COVID, let's say the main COVID 1, if you want to call it that, it was like the floodgates were left open all of a sudden. So it got very, very busy, very popular, very good, can't complain. The mask scenario recently, let's say, it's different. Took a bit of getting used to. It was, let's just say we're very fortunate here. It was a very brief stint in Canberra, and took a bit of getting used to. It's hard to communicate it, the physical barriers, but it was just unusual. Let's just say it didn't affect trade. I wouldn't say it affected trade in a great regard, and you might say there was almost a little bit of casualness about it. It was, people were. I won't go as far as saying it was a novelty, but you know what I mean. It wasn't the norm. People were just, we got to wear a mask, but didn't affect things too much, basically.
Yeah, because we hear a lot, not so much in Canberra, but in other states and RSMs all around Australia, lockdowns are called, and, businesses have stocked up for the next week.
Yep.
So they lose their stock.
Correct,
they have to tell their staff they're not working. Have you heard from other restaurant operators the impact of that?
Look, some people are affected differently to others, I think, in that game. Some people have been caught out, yes, I agree. We're a little bit different in what we do. The nature of our business is that we try and get things in as fresh as possible. Therefore, we're on a daily scenario. We don't hold a large inventory, let's say, as far as fresh food goes. Yep.
Yeah, so is that a move to more sort of European shopping where you'll buy the produce on the day that you're going to use?
Correct, yeah.
Now things have got back, as you said, the masks and things haven't really affected trade. I guess people are getting vaccinated. Hopefully we're getting through COVID. I know Sydney's struggling, but where to, I guess, from the future? Is it something as we go back to some sort of normal, you go back to what you were doing, or where do you go from here?
Look, let's just say I think that everybody going through what they have done so far, I think we're a bit better equipped for it. So if there were to be a lockdown, let's say we'd probably utilise the same model as before, if that's what we're getting at. I think that things aren't going to be any worse than what they've been, let's say. I have a positive outlook on it if that's what we're asking.
Yeah.
Yep.
And would you look at, so you're now putting your produce in like the IGA at Ainsley,
Yep.
as you said, something that you continue with, that's another, I guess, revenue source for the business?
Definitely still got that on the cards. That's why we haven't let it go. The whole thing with that, though, is that trying to run a restaurant, trying to supply, say, 6 supermarkets is realistically not physically possible within the structure we have. So that would be a separate business that is still on the cards and possibly going ahead anyway. Yep.
Sorry, you have extensive experience in this area. So for the cafes and restaurants actually going through a really difficult time, any piece of advice for them?
Well, look, the only thing I can tell you is that in any hospitality business, the best thing to do is be there yourself. And you have to obviously reduce the overhead as best possible, and that requires you being there more than what you probably were before. And look, that's really the bottom line. Hospitality thrives in our experience because you are there. The owner must be there and to watch over things. And as a result, it means you'll have to spend more time, look at your costs, your overheads, you know what I mean? And there's more input. Basically, is just try and put in more input and probably, just as we've done, I guess, look at other avenues. So, broaden the horizon a bit as far as what you can and can't do. We've found that, let's just say even in the hospitality industry, but even a drinks place can do takeaway for argument's sake. There's many options, basically. You've just really got to look out and think a bit more broadly.
And have you found a lot of support from your ongoing patrons through this?
Definitely. Right through, right even to taking deliveries and them realising that the owners are delivering, etc. They're very, very supportive and amazed and surprised. But yeah, definitely very fortunate that we've been there that long, 25 years, and plenty of support from the regular clientele.
Well, thank you, Joe and Young and Chris. That's all we've got time for today. We really appreciate everybody joining us today. If you've enjoyed the talk today, you can subscribe to our podcast on your favourite streaming platform. Once again, thank you, Young.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks, Andrew.
And thanks, Joe.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Talk big. Create, save and protect with RSM.